I was born in Austin, Texas at St. David's Hospital, and both of my parents were state employees at the time. I went to Breikerwitz Elementary School. My family moved to Barton Hills when I was 12 years old. And then so then I went to Keeling Junior High Magnet School and LBJ Science Academy, which existed before there was the Liberal Arts and Science Academy. And I grew up like any normal kid would in Austin, West Austin, which is creek walking and camping and playing outside a lot. But when it became apparent that I was going to be a little bit more academically competitive in Austin, the dynamic, and when I was boy crazy, that's when that was the time when the dynamics began to change, and I became aware that there were rules in Austin, despite the liberal statements, and that's when, I mean, to a certain extent, kids are always different around each other than they are around adults, but that's when kind of the nasty tones of, well, you're different, started about 4th or 5th grade. And it was more appropriate for me to, the expectation was that I not be competitive with my friends, and competitive in a friendly way, because when you've got a group of smart people together, there's always going to be some competition. But I was not supposed to be competitive. I was not supposed to make A's, and that became kind of the running gag when I got older. When I remember the one time I tried to cheat, and it was, and I had a teacher at Keeling, and I had been doing some project. I'd been really, really busy, and I was like, and I was copying this guy's homework, and the teacher, because I had never done that before, she said, Stephanie, what are you doing? I couldn't even lie about it. I was copying his worksheet. Please stop. Okay. I thought cool was a bad word until I was 10 years old. I remember having this bizarre conversation with my parents where I said, oh, this is neat. This is so neat. And my mother said, is it cool? I said, yes. Yes, it's cool. I had a gym buddy, and I miss him so much. I mention him all the time. And I went to the gym one time, and I said, all right, which is better, liberal racism or conservative racism? Neither. They're both racism. What is liberal racism? Liberal racism is you are the project. You are not allowed to participate competitively with white people. You are supposed to be very humbled by any opportunities that they give you, and you're supposed to, you're allowed to be happy, silent, and absent. Conservative racism obviously has taken a turn for the worst as of late, and has really become, there's no hiding it anymore. That's the difference between conservative racism and liberal racism. And I was determined not to go to college in Austin because of that mentality. I went to one of the great things about going to school in the Northeast, especially when you're in the presence of Black people who grew up in cities where Black people do everything and they're obvious doing everything, is that nobody feels comfortable telling those Black people that they're acting white. I won the Thought I Was White award many different times. I was basically considered an Oreo because Black people are not smart, they are not creative, they don't have anything to say. And people were fine with that. I was supposed to be fine with that. We're not supposed to have any sense of self-worth. That's what the thought you were white means. It means, oh, well, you're Black, so you know that you're inherently worthless, but you must have forgotten that. And you must think that you should have some sense of significance in existence. So you must think you're white. And there's swaths of people my age and who were raised and who are now currently being raised who believe that white equals worth. And so if you're Black, you're not supposed to have a sense of self-worth. That's why I think the whole Abigail Fisher nonsense is completely obvious. Obviously a farce, because Black people know better than to go to UT. We know better. That has been the only way you should go to UT is if you have a ball in your hands or if you can run real fast, because they do not want Black people there. There was a couple on the bus one day, and they were talking to this Black woman who had been talking to them, obviously, before I got on. And she said, I root for the Longhorns, but I wouldn't go to UT. And they said, why? And she said, because they're prejudiced. People who are 2 steps up from homeless on a bus know not to go to UT, and she thinks that we want her spot. No, she can have it. My dad is from East Texas during the 50s and 60s. The end. My mother is from Westchester County, New York, which is right outside New York, which means she grew up in a more multicultural circumstance. And it was not, and that wasn't weird to her. So she has often seen, not seen, because obviously my dad's seen, they met at Yale. They met on the first day of the first class at Yale. But her exposure to, we don't live in our own social enclave is much more developed than his, because, East Texas in the 50s and 60s, the dangerous things would happen if you had attempted to have a multicultural experience. I remember when I was working on my master's, one of the most poignant times for me was when I was doing a diversity index of the city of Austin, or no, not the city of Austin, basically the United States. But I had come across the city of Austin, and when my calculations, I discovered that we were more segregated than Jasper, Texas. That was eye-opening for me. But no, I mean the reason why my dad went to school was because a teacher took an interest in him, and said, you are definitely at least going to apply to Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. And my mom grew up right down the street from Yale. So the notion that Black people didn't do was a foreign concept to both of them. And so raising their children here has been really kind of eye-opening for them. Because in Austin, especially when you're around academically competitive parents, there's the notion of your kid should not be doing, my kid is doing. When I got into Yale, it was the loneliest time I had ever had. And I'd had some lonely times, but I was not to this day, it astonishes me for the simple fact that you were making A's, I was making A's. You were, trying to go for leadership positions. I was trying to go for leadership positions. Why was I supposed to not apply to and attend competitive situations? And they heard constantly from people who were like, wow, well, I mean, it's cold up there. I mean, she'll be far away. And they're just like, what? And of course, because that's where they went. So, and they went there in the 1970s when things were going down. And so they certainly didn't expect their daughter from liberal Austin to hear a lot of that nonsense when she was going to Yale. So there was talk of moving the Juneteenth parade up to Pflugerville and Round Rock, which I think would be appropriate because Austin has no interest, none, in successful black people. They don't want that. They don't. They think they're liberal. The city, the tech industry is the worst offenders because, I mean, they're 34, 35. I grew up with these people. I know how these people grew up. They grew up in racially homogenous communities saying Negroes are dangerous and stupid and ugly and lazy. And so now they have millions of dollars to build companies to ignore black people. They have no interest. They were talking on the news about how, the tech industry vows to be more diverse. And they're like, well, it sounds like what they said last year. And I was like, I know that's what they said last year. They don't want any black people at the tech companies. That's why they build them out there. Oh, but it's cheaper. No, it's not cheaper to run new water, new electricity, new internet. They don't want black people to go to work at tech companies. That's why the buses don't go there. That's why they build facilities that are one way in and one way out. That's why, black people are the garbage of the employment field. And the tech people are not going to change because they don't want to. So, I'm just like, what are you talking about? Of course we're not in the tech industries. We know better than that. I mean, if you want to work in tech and you're black, and there are people that I do know who are black and work in tech, number one, get out of Austin. Or, conversely, start your career elsewhere and then come to Austin. But you are starting absolutely nothing here. I was spending time with an Indian guy for a little while, and we went to Houston to go see NASA because he was an engineer, and yes, and Indian people kept giving us the stink eye because we're spending time together, and I said, you know what? Get ready for it, because the next person who gives me the stink eye when I am just sitting here with my friend going to NASA like everybody else, it's going to be a pat on the butt or a kiss on the shoulder, because I'm not having it. This is my state. I am from here. I am not going to I'm not going to tolerate people making me feel uncomfortable. I'm just not. And I grew up around everybody, because I grew up in the nerdy classes, which were of course predominantly white, but there were obviously other races there, obviously, but so I have lost my patience with people who want to pretend as though I'm lost. My triathlete team in Austin isn't all white. My friends are not My friends are not all black. I am not going to be constrained. If we have something in common, we have something in common. But, you know, this whole notion of black people are assigned to other black people. They're not allowed to converse with anybody else. We are assigned to other black people because everybody keeps talking about, oh, you know, we have to keep money in the black community and black people need to work for black people. And it's like, so basically it doesn't matter if we do good work because you automatically see race and you tell us, why aren't you working in a predominantly black company? I mean, you know, it's illogical to say that you don't see race and you don't see color when none of your friends are basically any color other than what you are. You know, it's like a lot of black women dating. You know, it's romantic to meet somebody and to actually have a connection, to have something in common. It is not romantic to be told one day you'll find a nice black man. And that, you know, you are a black man, so obviously I'm not saying that black men are bad people. They're just people. But again, it's not romantic to be assigned to anything. And so it's not flattering to be assigned to anything. There was a gay black guy I knew, and he's 6'4" and he likes guys that are shorter than he is. Like that's his thing, which is easy because he's 6'4". And he went to an LGBTQ table at UT, and they were looking at him like, oh, do you know what this means? As if any black man who's 6'4" would intentionally go to an LGBTQ in full view of other people, knowing that people might beat him down on accident. No, there's what's it? And then they told him, oh, well, you'll find a nice black man one day. And he's like, okay. And so he's working on getting out of here. There's there's another black woman who's a doctoral student at UT, and she's like, I have to leave Austin because I don't know what my life would be. And I was like, yes, leave as fast as you can. When people say that they don't see color, I was wondering why that annoys me. And I majored in African American studies, so I think about race because I've not been allowed to forget it. And I was reading a book on segregation, and I was like, this has been going on for thousands of years. You are not the anthropological anomaly that is going to counteract thousands of years of human behavior. No one is. Pretending like it doesn't exist is the most dangerous thing that white people have done, because then they make it about, well, you're just not trying hard enough. And now, on the flip side, black people containing ourselves in our own community isn't helpful either, because in any race that does that, it's not helpful. You know why? Because it allows people to think that we're in a post-racial society. It allows people, it affirms the belief that the only community that deserves resources and respect is the white community. That and that's the, and if we truly believe that, then we will continue to live in a segregated mindset. But if we are more integrationist, because actually, no, people are not going to judge us by the content of our character. They're just not. I have one thing that was really, really eye-opening for me is the fact that a lot of people came to my parents with their children and said, hire them and to work in your business, because my parents have had a law firm in the city of Austin for about 25 years. And their friends would come to them and say, here, could my child have some experience? And then when it came time for their child to apply to jobs, they had nothing to say. I couldn't get a job doing administrative assistant work for the city of Austin. I am a little bit disgusted with a lot of my parents' peers because they basically lied to my parents' face and said, of course we're interested in your daughter. Oh no, she should totally apply. We'll totally work it and we'll make it work. And then when I've actually applied and I've actually made an effort, oh, well, she just wasn't the best candidate. And we had so many good applicants. And I'm just like, well, I don't, what exactly would you like somebody to say to that? And again, these are not Black people. These are, because again, I did not grow up in a Black community. I grew up in West Austin. and so no, that's I am really, really finding that people love to say in an integrated world, oh, you speak so well, you're so sharp, you're so smart. And then they say, I just don't know why we're not getting more Black people. And it's like, look, again, you're not the anthropological anomaly that's going to counteract thousands of years of behavior. You're going to have to open your mind. You're going to have to interact with people who don't look like you. Because I grew up, and I never thought of it until I got older, because hindsight is 20/20. If you're not ready to compete with people who don't look like you, you're not ready to compete. And at the very basic primitive level of existence, we're all people competing for resources. So Black people can't live in segregated societies because we have to compete with everybody else for resources. So no, there's so we can't say, but on the flip side, no, I don't think that it is rational for people to tell us that, oh, well, you should work on building up your own community. I kind of thought I was trying to build up the community, not the Black community. So I guess that makes it your problem. I want to be lots of things. I wanted to be a writer, and then I wanted to be an architect because I love buildings. Then I wanted to be, I had an amazing, amazing Latin teacher and a really cool physics teacher. And I was like, I'm going to major in classics and physics when I get to Yale, because those were the things that I found the most interesting. But I didn't realize that most of my interest in Latin stemmed from the fact that I had such great teachers, and my interest and I still find science fascinating, but I got to college and I did fail calculus, but I remember taking the calculus test and I had a question and the TA laughed at me. And my friend, and one of my college friends who's also Black, she would literally work out problems, show them to people, and they would tell her that she was wrong. They don't want Black people in sciences. They don't. And then, and so I majored in African American studies because the teacher, Diana Paulin, said that was talking about Phyllis Wheatley and how people would make her write poems on command, and just to prove that she could actually do the poems. And I was like, why? I mean, she wrote them. And she said, my professor said, why do we need Black people to prove that they're smart today? And I was like, ooh. And that was it. And that was what got me to major in African American studies. And then I became interested in planning because I love movement. I remember my first trip to Boston ever in life was awesome to me because I found out 24 hours before that Amherst is not a suburb of Boston. And so I got off of, we planned it out, my parents and I planned it out the day before. And I was driven to the airport in Austin. I got off of a plane to take a shuttle, to take a T, to take a bus to Amherst. And that is how I made it to the National Junior Classical League convention in 1998. I literally took 5 modes of transportation, and I was so adept at using them that I actually met a woman while I was doing this, and she was at the airport. She was like, I have to get to the train station and I don't know how, because the bus left from a combination bus train system. I said, well, come on with me. And I not only went there, but I took somebody with me and guided somebody else to get there. And you know, I love how communities are put together. I love, I really just love how people interact. I mean, when I did my master's, I focused on business and planning because I thought, why would you separate those? That's the stupidity that created this country. Business is for what? Planning for what? They're not distinct. They're the same. There is a reverend, because I have friends who are clergy, so lots of friends who are and who work in the church. And by the church, I mean the church. I don't just mean the Black church. And there was this reverend white guy, and he said, redemption without repentance is meaningless. When people don't ask for forgiveness, when people don't care that they hurt you, what's the point of forgiving them? Oh, but forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. No, forgiveness comes with a restoration in the relationship. That's when forgiveness comes. I think that the answer to race relations in this country lies in 2 factors, education and intimacy. You have to learn about other people, and you actually have to be and by intimacy, I don't necessarily mean marriage. I mean, when you say that you're friends with somebody, not just, oh, they've come to my party 3 times. Would they call you if things are going badly? Would you converse if things are going badly? I mean, I have tons of friends where we will talk until the wee hours. And again, friends of all races, we will talk until the wee hours because we know that we have got each other's back. And and we know when we get depressed, and because I deal with depression, we know that we can talk to somebody and it is safe and nobody will tell us, oh, just shut up and get over it. No, and that's the difference. That because people say, oh, it's so hard to be racist. It's very easy to be racist. Very easy to be racist. I have been racist for way too long, but I came to the conclusion that I cannot be both Christian and racist. One of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, the economy of this nation has always been built with underpaid labor. Everything, our food now, our clothes now, our technology now. Cotton, any crop back in the, like any grand scale economy is built off the backs of subjugated people. And so this whole notion that, oh, we're free and everybody can do everything, it's like, do you realize how stupid you sound? What's the favorite thing? The Declaration of Independence, because Thomas Jefferson wrote that. Thomas Jefferson also wrote Notes on the State of Virginia that stated black and white people could never have the same amount of freedom. So basically the whole notion that Thomas Jefferson was this great, he had slaves. And when you have now he was a good writer. That's about what you can say about him. He was a good writer, and he said things that made people think. So yes, that's what he did. The Lincoln movie, I didn't see it. You know why? Because Lincoln said, if I could have stopped the war by not freeing the slaves, I would have. And so he is not some great man. He was just the president and
politician and strategist.
A politician and strategist.
How can I solve this problem?
Everybody was mad at the portrayal of Lyndon Baines Johnson, and they said, oh, well, if he didn't sign the Civil Rights Act, then we wouldn't have it. He called it the nigger bill. So there are no clean hands. There are no clean hands. The assumption that we can just will any of that away and that we can work any of that away is moronic, because all it's doing is making things worse. Austin was a city of state workers, of university workers and hippies. That's what Austin has been. And that's who would have lived here, because we have basically spent our time saying we don't want poor people in Austin anymore. Austin has significantly changed to a point of disdain to almost hatred for anybody who doesn't have money. And here's my thing about the word gentrification. I don't like the word gentrification. You know why? Because that makes it about race. And the reason why I don't want it to be about race is not because I can't talk about race. Clearly, I've proven that. But because when you say gentrification, you say, we're just getting rid of black people. Austin and cities like it are full of displacement. They got rid of everybody who they didn't want, and they built a city to cater to people who they did want. That's what they did. Gentrification was based in the UK about, the gentry who decided to move back to the city, and they got rid of all the longtime residents. People didn't even leave the city; they just moved to the suburbs. They still lived around here, so they weren't getting out. They just decided, I want a bigger house and a yard, so I'm going there. But now they've discovered, wait a minute, everything's close in the city. Yes, It is. Everybody who lived here thought so too. And we have this ridiculous catering to people who want to drive their cars in town. There is no reason to create luxury transit-oriented development because people who have money can take their cars. People who can't afford cars and don't have money need to be where the jobs are. So basically, that's why it's displacement, because you just got rid of everybody who literally needed to be in the city and needed to access to the resources because they had no options otherwise, and put the quiet, skinny, rich, young white people. And I love the fact that I love the fact that Eric Tang, who's the professor who came up with the study that was like, wow, Black people are leaving. And what I think is ironic is the fact that Black people have been saying that for years. We've been saying that for years. Thank goodness a nice, safe Asian guy said it, so that now we'll actually pay attention to it. Again, Eric Tang, awesome guy. But it should not have taken him pointing it out for people to actually look around and see it. So that's what's it. You have a token Black friend to say you're not racist. That's look, see, it's my Black friend. There was a guy on a bus on the bus, and he was cute, and I was looking at him. He was looking at me, and I was like, "Oh, yay!" And then you know, we're just talking, and then he mentioned a significant Black person that he worked with, and I was like, so I'm not just a woman; I'm a Black woman, and you know, and people say, well, why is that so offensive? It's like, well, think about it. If I were trying to hit on a white guy and I decided to bring up every white guy who I thought was, every white person I knew, I mean, what? Wouldn't you think that I was trying to basically prove, see, I'm safe for white people? And it's like, no, that's not sexy. It's sexy to be told that you're beautiful and attractive. It's not sexy to say, yes, I see your Blackness, and your Blackness is, it's like, I don't have any choice about that. So how about we focus on something else? I mean, even gender, to a certain extent, we have control over. But you know, I'm Black. That is how people see me, and that is how I see myself. The end. So I can't change that. If your child turns out to be gifted, pay very close attention to the circumstances under which they are gifted. Any circumstance that allows white people to laugh at your child, that allows anybody to laugh at your child, make sure to keep them away from those situations. Make sure that if your child is not, quote unquote, academically competitive, that people are not making excuses to put them into the juvie to jail pipeline. Observe a class, and make sure that your children, when they get finished with school, whether that's high school or anything further, make sure that they do not stay here in Austin unless there is an opportunity for them to do something other than be the help. don't keep them isolated in the Black community, because that allows people to see them as insignificant, because they say, well, they're not even paying attention to us. But also, but people cannot thrive if they have to put limits on their existence. And make sure that your child has a spine, because they're gonna need it. We're not allowed to be who we are. We're just not. Again, I like hiking and biking and triathlons and planning and so forth. And those are quote unquote white behaviors. If I had not spent any time around anybody but Black people in Austin, I mean, I would have grown up thinking that too. That white people do this, and Black people do this, and Asian people do this, and Latino people do this, and women do that. And it's like, no, I grew up, in my opinion, as an Austinite. And we're called the fittest city in the nation. So all those things that I just mentioned are things that Austinites are supposed to do. And I'm aware that I'm Black, because I don't get to forget. But you know, I looked at Eminem and I said, when people say, oh, he speaks so Black, he speaks like the son of a single mother who was raised in Detroit. In this country, or maybe it's just not effective in this country, there are 3 factors in this country that contribute to upward mobility: race, transit accessibility, and the amount of resources somebody has. If you are a person of color and you live in a really accessible place, you most likely don't have any resources. However, if you are a white person and you live in a place with no transit accessibility, then the chances are you don't really have any resources either. If you are a Latino person who lives in an area with lots of resources, chances are you most likely are in a place where you don't have a lot of transit accessibility. But I mean, you see, 3 things in this country that determine upward mobility and equality: race, transit accessibility, and resources. And so I'm disgusted with the fact that people have spent, with the way businesses are placed in this country, because it's like, you put no resources in communities for people of color, because you said, look, handle your own business, we don't care. And then you call us all criminals. Well, you took away all our resources. I mean, again, back to the primitive level, everybody is competing over resources. If you take away resources from people, that leads to more, we'll say, aggressive competition. If you have plenty of resources and basically opportunities, then surprise, surprise, not so much aggressive competition. There was great conversation with a white guy from Galveston. And he's like, and I came to Austin because I had to evacuate because of the hurricane. White people had to evacuate? Yes, everybody had to evacuate because of the hurricane. So after we'd all settled down from that, he's like, and I came to Austin because I'm a musician, and I was looking around, and they said, oh, we're liberal. And I'm looking around, and they say, we're liberal. And I want to say, y'all know you're racist, right? that was almost the opening to my master's thesis. I love that so much. But what instead was, there's Sex and the City 1, the movie. Miranda is separating from her husband, and she says, and she's looking for an apartment. White guy with a baby. Wherever he's going, that's where we need to be.